automotive, who talk about the problems. The AutoHub show is all about solutions. Ready for the solutions? Let's get this masterclass started live right now.
If you look at the last 4 years again, we've answered 41 million phone calls for dealers over the last 4 years with our AI platform. We've also handled over 150 million text messages. And so when you look at just those raw numbers, that's a 4 to 1, 3.5, 4 to 1 text to phone call. So I don't know. Here's what I can tell you, though. I believe that the customer wants to be met where they are presently. If that is text, voice, video call, if they want to be engaged and engaged instantly.
I'm Vince Delmonico, General Sales Manager with Cruise Ford Lincoln. Larry Feldman came out and did one of our training courses. Absolutely incredible. I sat through the course myself. The engagement that our salespeople gained from it, the excitement that he brings, it was a new way of looking at things that we're already doing and how we can improve them. Love it. It's literally the best thing since sliced bread.
My name's Fareed Ahmed. I'm the founder and CEO of DSMA. So why should you use DSMA to sell your most valuable asset? The answer is very simple. It's our unparalleled approach to our clients' needs and satisfaction. Remember, DSMA, we're real people doing real deals.
Meta, Instagram, social, and your team is still waiting for ups like it's 1999. Let's be honest, your market isn't watching TV commercials, they're double tapping and engaging with your competitors on social media posts. People are shopping these days for cars and servicing their vehicles in between watching cat videos. That's where we can help. Retail Resilient is the go-to authority for social selling in the car industry. Whether you're a new car franchise dealer, an independent, a buy here, pay here, a broker, a dealership owner or manager, we have something for you. Remember, when your lot is quiet, it means your social media is not loud enough. Check us out at retailresilient.com so we can retarget you on our social media feeds.
All righty. Good morning. So we've got Erica and we've got Troy on, and of course Peter. So we were talking a little bit about, I guess, charity this morning before the show. Unfortunately, I guess an associate or a friend or someone I ran into at a coffee place died a couple weeks ago. But he used to go in and drop $1,000 just buy people free coffee and stuff, which is kind of interesting regularly, which I thought was kind of interesting. I guess presenting payments is kind of interesting too, but more importantly, when you look at options, and I think we talk about this a lot on the show, but it's definitely something that I think isn't talked about enough. You know, I used to sell cars when I sold cars based on options. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what's changed in terms of presenting options or payments, if you want to call it that, in the last couple of years. I mean, go ahead, Erica, you were on first. So tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and what do you think about presenting options or payments to customers these days?
Yeah, hi, I'm Erica Bruno. I'm the Senior Director of Key Accounts here at Recall Masters. But I've grown up in automotive. My grandfather had 17 different franchises. My mom was the 7th female Toyota principal in the nation. So I really grew up doing everything in the dealerships. And I think right now is one of the most interesting times in our industry in general. But I think especially when it comes to payments, and my husband works at a Ford store, he's a salesperson there, and it's becoming increasingly alarming how much people not only cannot afford, some of the payments and some of the structures that are being presented at this point in time, but the amount of negative equity that a lot of vehicles are experiencing right now due to being sold during the pandemic, right? So 5-ish years ago, which regardless if it's lease or a finance is around the time most people tend to get out of their cars, right? That 3 to 5 year mark. So then to replace a car that they've historically always replaced 3 to 5 years is now a much higher payment than what they were used to. So I think it's exactly like you said, Ian, it's about giving people options, but giving them realistic options of, hey, historically, maybe your payment was $500, right? But now $500 is not either going to get you the car that you genuinely want or need, and then having to understand, you know, the math that's going to get you into the car that you want or need. Or it's as simple as, hey, I know historically you always financed or bought cash. Would you consider a lease? Would you consider maybe a pre-owned, a CPO car? You know, and this is the type of savvy that I think we need to be teaching our salespeople, is to understand the unique individual, right? And what they need in their car, right? And like actually addressing that first before even beginning to talk about payments and beginning to talk about, you know, the structure of payments, because at that point you need to really identify that needs assessment and as well understand their budget. Because if you don't understand their budget, you could show them anything, and the minute you show them $1,000 payment, right, they're going to be like, oh my God, that's insane. And you got to be prepping them for that discussion, right? Like, it's about setting the right expectations and also understanding the customer that's walking through that door.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, the average car now, I think in North America is $50,000, I think. So when you think about that from a finance perspective, even if you're going 96 months, which I think is a little insane, but even if you're doing that, I mean, I used to look at it and go, okay, well, $10,000 is, I think it's $250 a month or something to that effect. But you start looking at $1,000 a month and people are like, you know, sticker shocked about that. But I think it's also an interesting calculation, because as you look at changes in the market with vehicle types, and even with, you know, new EVs landing, at least in Canada, you're going to have Chinese EVs here shortly. But when you start looking at that and going, okay, so even a $25,000 car, if that was available, you know, is still a pretty high payment for most people before interest. So you got to look at it and say, okay, you got to sell with options today more than you've ever sold. But I mean, go ahead.
And Ian, I think you're right on the money there. But what Erica brought up is quite interesting, and it's a shame, because we were supposed to have David Cryer on the show today, and he's the owner of Guest Concepts, First Pencil, and he came out of Gallup and Ford. He's kind of the expert on penciling deals, and unfortunately, with all the crazy stuff going on with the airlines and stuff like this in the airports, he's actually had some travel issues and got stuck, so he can't be on the call. But one of the things that I want to follow up that Erica said is, during COVID and we had the chip shortage, you didn't have to negotiate. You didn't have to present payments. Basically, what would happen is, if you were interested in a car and that car was available, you basically, here's what the payment was. You either took it or not. You know, and a lot of dealers approach, hey, look, you don't want this car? That's right. I got 5 people lined up behind you that will pay my price. So we lost a whole group of people that were salespeople that could actually sell the car, handle this negotiation. And now what the dealers have is they have a bunch of order takers. And now the market has turned around, and now we don't have order takers. You're having to compete. There's now, you know, competition in the market. Dealers are actually having to spend money and advertise, which they haven't had to do in, what, 2-3 years? They haven't spent any money on advertising. But now you've got people coming in, and they really need to think about how they present the payments and go back to the basics. You know, I mean, I remember back in the day, we used the Foursquare. You know, you come in, and I've always been a big proponent of leasing. You say, hey, here's what your monthly payment is. You know, here's your how much money down. Oh, and by the way, we have this purchase option. And you have to give them some different choices, because, like you were saying, Ian, the price of cars is ridiculous. And anybody who's trying to finance for 96 months, I mean, I really think they're not only creating a bad situation with the consumer, but they're also, you know, putting that buyer out so far in the future. We're not going to get them back in, and we're actually hurting ourselves, you know, for future sales. So this is a pretty important topic, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
I was going to say the other part of that too, Peter, is the sheer fact, exactly like you said, order taker, you know, the high profit margins, if you will, of the pandemic, which I even said back then, profit's not a dirty word, but you also have to focus on the retention that's going to come in the next 5 to 10 years, right, off of that, because that's going to affect your business. But the other part that, to me, you know, it's about that expertise, because we now have B2C companies, like exactly like Ian brought up about the Chinese, you know, EV coming into Canada. We have AVs who, again, someone can go on their phone and in 5 minutes get a payment for a Tesla, for, you know, a Rivian, for potentially a Scout coming, that all of a sudden they don't need to go to a dealership anymore, right, to buy the car. And I was at a sorority event 2 weekends ago, and I had a woman tell me that, a sister from, you know, prior generations. She goes, I don't have to go to a dealership to buy a car anymore if I don't want to. And her husband had grown up in dealerships. So that's the other part, is you have this whole other customer segment who's like, I don't like this experience, right? So I don't even want to interact with it. So that's why, to me, yes, it's budget, right? Like you have to be budget conscious for the customer, but you also have to create an experience that people actually want to go to. And again, I would love to hear from Troy, because I'm sure CDK has some, deep research on that as well. But it's like, it's such a unique position that dealers are in right now that you have to have your branding of why someone should choose you.
And the one other thing I'll throw into tie in what you said is, we stayed in a hotel this week and we went to the Alzheimer's car auction. It was a charity event for Alzheimer's, and we stayed in a hotel. And I don't watch commercials. I mean, most of us, I'm sure you don't watch commercials. We don't watch commercials. Well, in the hotel, we were kind of forced to watch commercials. And I was blown away that Shaquille O'Neal is now doing commercials for Carvana. So think about that. They now got Shaquille O'Neal, great name, great reputation, who's out there now promoting Carvana, which is just giving consumers another option to avoid coming to the dealership, because Carvana's whole method is, hey, we're going to make it easy, we're going to make negotiations easy, yada, yada, yada. But now you've got somebody like that, and they've got, putting a lot of money into that ad campaign, which is pretty frightening.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at $50,000 car over 60 months before interest and taxes, it's $833 a month for 60 months, which is a pretty high number for your average car. And we know most people aren't buying that. They might buy a more expensive car. But Troy, you guys deal with a lot of dealerships. What's your opinion on the payment side? I mean, has it changed in terms of how dealers are dealing with payments? I know in Canada we do a lot of bi-weekly stuff, but go ahead.
Well, first of all, Troy from CEK, and you're right, Ian. I just want to piggyback on the back of what you just said here, is that $833 of no down payment on a $50,000 vehicle, which $50,000 is almost just slightly above the low barrier to entry for a lot of people in the new car market. And you actually, Eric, we do tons of research, as I'm sure Ian's mentioned our insights book, and I'm going to nerd out about that in a couple of seconds here. But if you go back to COVID, which we talked about earlier, none of the OEMs had any lease programs. So we would typically, as you said, Erica, rely on those 2-3 years lease cycles for us to get a decent amount of used inventory in great condition that we could then sell to the people that didn't want to pay $833 plus. Well, couple that with Ian's comment about the 96-month terms, which I know we're going to talk about long terms later, but you have customers that are so far upside down that $50,000 vehicle is no longer a $50,000 vehicle. It's a $65,000 vehicle, because they're $15,000 underwater from the car they bought during COVID. And they still owe 4 years worth of financing on at possibly 6-7% interest. So with everyone being upside down, you're not just selling a payment to get rid of the vehicle that you're closing on today. You're getting people out of the financial hot water they found themselves in 3 years ago because of the way the world was. So I think there's a massive problem there. And the other part of it too, your sister in the sorority, Erica, mentioned that you don't have to go into a dealership. And so to go back to our insights book, 31% of the buying demographic today for new vehicles is either Gen Z or young millennials. They have no interest in going into a dealership. And I'm a Gen Xer. Someone tried to sell me a car with a paper Foursquare the other day, and I left. So if I'm not willing to tolerate a Foursquare, you pull one out on a 26-year-old person, they're going to look at you like you have 6 heads, and you're not going to get that deal no matter what the payment is. So presenting the payments had to evolve, but more importantly, I think people's lifestyle and the way that the vehicle purchase issue happened during COVID and the financial issues with 84, 96 plus month terms has created a bit of a monster that people have found themselves in, that the payments are going to be sort of the ugly warts on the whole process now.
Yeah, $65,000 a month over 60 months is $1,083 plus interest, depending on the rate. So Larry, I know you're talking there, but did you have a comment on payments? I think he's busy doing something. So what's the best way to sell cars with payments? If the payments are high, I mean, I know in Canada, we've been doing bi-weekly for a long time. I believe even Volkswagen tried this thing with a lunch bag. It was like $5 a day or something like that. But what's the best way to get around this payment? I mean, I personally think the best way is just to be straight up with people and go, hey, I mean, here's the math. I mean, when I sold cars, I would just take out my calculator. I actually got one of those big calculators at Staples, and I do like the big screen and go through it. But when you look at a rough factor, I mean, that's just the cost of the money. But to your point, Troy, I mean, you didn't used to be 20 grand upside down in a Toyota.
Well, especially if the last vehicle you bought in was during COVID, which created this whole mess in the first place. Because if you did have a Toyota, God forbid you had a 2018 Tacoma, you were getting higher than what a 2021 MSRP was for that 2018 Tacoma. Now it's 2026 and you're going to trade that in, and all of a sudden your used vehicle is worth way less than you thought it was going to be. And so the down payment that you had that is way lower. So I think when we look at this mess, it's going to have a bunch of areas, even as far as the trade-in is concerned, to make that 50 a 65.
Oh yeah. So Larry, what did you think on payments?
Give me 1 second, my buddy.
Yeah. How do you present payments when the payments knock people off their chair?
I think what you have to do is run to the problem. If you act like it doesn't exist, it gets worse.
Yeah.
So I would preface it with, listen, and I don't care if they're drooling on themselves, Troy. I always tell them, you look like a sophisticated buyer. And so you're probably aware that interest rates are a little strange, but rest assured, I'm going to do whatever I can to get you the best deal possible. Get that out of the way. And this is why it's more important than ever to be a salesperson, to find out what really turns them on, what really gets them excited. We're Americans. Well, some of your Canadians, but we love to go. We love to pay forever for something if we like it enough. I always talk about, Erica, that I'm from Philadelphia. We were starved for a Super Bowl. Everybody in our division, the Giants won them, the Redskins won them. We were like the stepchild. And people went to Minnesota and mortgaged their houses the year that we beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. I think that's insane, but they'll tell their great grandkids. If you like it enough, if you want it enough, you're going to get excited. I think the problem is a lot of salespeople are so worried about that they're not going to like the payment that they exacerbate the problem by not taking enough time to build rapport and value and getting involved in something. Hey, my hook line has always been, when they tell me it's too expensive, is, man, I feel you. I'm on a budget too, and it's hard to keep it. But I bet you work as hard as I do. When they would tell me they work much harder than I do, I'd say, well, don't you deserve something nice? So I think more than ever, it's important to build value, to find them something they really like. Because I'll tell you what, I think we'll all agree, it's real easy to say no to an $800 or $900 payment on something you don't even like.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it was a quote from a sales trainer. I'm not sure which one it was. It's like if the space shuttle was affordable, people would buy it. So, at the end of the day, I think part of it is to sell with payments, but also to sell with options. What I found when I was selling cars, and what used to drive the managers that I work with nuts, was I just keep presenting options until the option made sense. Like I literally have like a card deck full of 6 different ways to look at this. Like here's if you did this way, here's if you did this way, here's if you did that way, and then we'd be focusing on that versus pricing and discounting. Right.
Ian, one other thing, as usual on a Monday morning, I'm at a dealership trying to tie up a lot of loose ends. But I got a text from Laura Berman. She's not trying to sell anything, but her and her husband have about the best buy saver payment I've ever seen. So I think Rick's trying to get on. You may want to ask his opinion, since their whole company is predicated upon making payments a little bit more, affordable.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at even service, so when someone gets hit in service with, a brake job or whatever it is, and it's $1,000 more than they thought, I mean, even that can be a payment thing. I think Affirm is another company that's made that possible in a lot of different areas. But I think at the end of the day, if you can make it affordable for people and they do like it, to your point, they're going to get that done. But running away from it, I think, is a mistake.
Anytime you avoid a problem, it's like a little kid breaks a lamp and they close their eyes so their mom can't see them. It doesn't go away. You've got to address problems. steal a little Shakespeare, do a little foreshadowing, you explain ahead of time that what the environment is and that you're going to do everything you can to counteract it. But everything goes away if they want it bad enough. Like I said, I've never met anybody that doesn't enjoy going into debt if they love it enough. That's why people get mortgages and go on vacations and buy jewelry.
Fair enough. Erica, what do you think the best way to sell with payments is today? Like if you had to just forget the car, I just want to sell on a payment. How do you do that?
Well, so you actually brought up a really great point that I was going to bring up is, and Troy kind of talks to it too, you know, him being Gen X, I'm a millennial, and then I was talking to a bunch of Gen Zs at that sorority weekend. So the fact that you have Klarna, Affirm, you know, all these different payment options that where you can buy makeup at Sephora, right? Like it could be anything where it breaks down into payments. The younger generation is very, very smart when it comes to that, to understand, okay, maybe I can't afford a Peloton bike right now, but if I break it down into $100 payments, I can afford it over a year, right? Something of that nature. So if you're able to then figure out, you know, it's so funny because for me, like my grandfather really taught me a lot. And I joke that I was blessed with 50 years of advanced knowledge because of him, because he literally taught me all the good, bad, and ugly of the business. And he would always say, Erica, at the end of the day, kind of like what Larry was saying, people will figure out how to pay for the things that they want if they trust you enough to make the right decisions, right? Like with their best interests at heart. And two, if you just explain it to them in a way they can understand. Because where he had his business, it was a lot of Portuguese, a lot of immigrants, right? Like not highly education. And the most financial literacy they had was stuffing their cash under the mattress, right? Like, and we would always joke about that. And so, you know, growing up, even when I sold my first car, I'm like, could you just pull a little bit more cash under the mattress out, right? Like as a joke, but it's the truth, right? You relate to the people that you're selling to. And so if you can then break it down for someone, because like I'm a prime example. When I go and I help people buy cars or buy a car myself, I'm like, okay, talk to me about what are my options, right? Like could lease, payment, you know, finance, etc. And then from there, what else can I get into it that can protect my investment, right? For however long I keep it for, like an extended warranty, like a maintenance package, etc. So I can ensure that what I'm paying for is 100% what I want, 100% what I need based off my lifestyle. And then from there, I will make the payment decision based on whatever is best for me in that moment in time. Right. And so I think that's the other part is, you know, my generation and younger, we're incredibly not only tech savvy, we're incredibly finance savvy because of the fact we entered, you know, a lot of our jobs early 2008, 2009, 2010, right? Like depth of the recession. So my generation and younger, we're not trying to get into mountains and mountains of debt if we can. We're looking at, okay, what can we realistically afford, right? And not only that, what do we realistically need? Because that's the other part of it. We'll stretch a tiny bit if it means that, like my best friend is a good example. She's got 2 kids and they're going to be very tall kids, right? Like they are not tiny people. So all of a sudden her little Prius is not going to work anymore. And she's looking at, do I get into an SUV or do I just make the jump into like a van, right? And so at that point I was like, you really need to figure out 2 things. One, what does your family and you need, right, in a vehicle? And 2, what's the type of payment that you can afford? And then get the car that you feel the most safe and most reliable in, because you'll probably keep that car for, like she did her Prius, 10 plus years. So you have to know the person, you have to understand it, and then you can guide them towards the thing that's not only going to be right for them, but the right budget and the right vehicle and everything else.
Fantastic. We got Mr.
But Erica, wait 1 second, Ian. But Erica, that involves getting to know their family and how many people do you have in your family and how old are they and what school do they go to. And this used to be 101 with sales, and now it's like an alien culture. You know, people are so used to, looking into their damn screen. 4 of them at dinner all looking into their screen instead of actually having a conversation.
100%.
Well, and the other part too is, I don't know if you guys are big into ChatGPT, but I literally last night, we were talking about vacation, right? I put into ChatGPT everything that we wanted, the budget that we wanted, the, you know, locations that we wanted, and it gave me exactly to a T a plan of like, okay, you want the most fun, you go here. You want the most relaxing, you go here. You know, and here's how your budget's going to vary and this and that. People are doing that with cars, and if anybody thinks that they're not, they're naive, right? Like that's the part that I'm like, technology is advancing so quickly that, again, if you're not teaching the people skills, right, that they need to combat the technology portion of it, you're dead in the water.
But the positive side of that is 4 out of 5 people to this day still don't buy what they came in for. So even if ChatGPT has laid it all out for them, if you're charming, if you're inclusive, if you're actually listening rather than talking, I still think you can turn a lot of that around.
Yeah, I mean, the days of people not knowing what a payment would be on an asset, years ago, as simple as a calculator, but today they can research that and drive around simultaneously. Not that that's advisable, but you could.
Well,
right?
And Ian too, like almost every dealership website has some sort of payment calculator on it. Whether it's the OEM tier 1 website, the tier 3, like at the store level website, you can get you can pretty much desk your own deals. I mean, short of discounting the vehicle itself, and best guess on a trade, which you can click on the trade-in tool and get an appraisal on that right away. So, when you're walking in, the payments are there. But again, I think there's some variables in that. I don't know how far upside down I am on my loan or how far I really am. I know how much I think I am. The other one is I don't know what you're going to give me on my trade. It could be a good, better, excellent situation. And then finally, there's very few people in the Gen Z, early young millennial market are prepared for what's going to happen to them when they get into the F&I box. And, Erica, you brought it up earlier, like getting that conversation out of the way early about extended warranty and prepaid maintenance and things of that nature will help them, but they didn't factor that into their payment. So, as much as people do change their prerogative, change their trajectory and target when they get into the dealership and actually get with a product advisor and learn more about the vehicles and start to get a sense of what's going on, there's some other stuff that kicks up as well. And as part of making a better experience that Erica alluded to, and Larry too, is be upfront early with extended warranty, prepaid maintenance, things of that nature. Everything, like again, in Canada, vehicles with block heaters and mats and winter tires, depending on the province that you're in, that could be an extra $3,000-$4,000 or 5-6% on top of it that you didn't factor into your monthly payment. And then when you sit in the box and they say, okay, well, your payment isn't $836 a month that you thought it was going to be, it's $1,105 with tax and the F&I products. Now all of a sudden you're back to selling again,
right?
And that can be challenging.
Well, what do you think, Doug? I mean, I know you guys deal with the one-person selling model. Do you feel that the way people are selling with payments has changed based on that model versus how it used to be?
Well, I think there's a couple of factors that are weighing in these days. I think that the FTC ruling that came out is going to make it where you're going to have to be transparent right from the chute. And I also think that with the advent and slow adoption of online purchasing and people being able to do whatever they want on their own, the days of packing payments, the days of trying to get away with nefarious activities are going to be long gone. I think that as I heard, and I apologize for being late, had some tech issues, but I think that the mentality now has to go from stopping from selling someone a car and really adopting, let me help you buy a car, and let's really take a look at what you can and can't do, what your long-term usage is going to be, and let's figure out what's best for you in your particular situation right now. Now, certainly the one-person model, and yeah, we have a lot of stores that do that, lends itself to that level of one-on-one consulting. But frankly, I think every dealership, regardless of the sales model, is going to have to adopt more of a consultative approach, especially when you factor in, don't take out of the equation adding things to the payment. Just take into the fact of the current market conditions. Gas is expensive, prices are high, insurance isn't cheap. It's not what you think it's going to be. Let's really take a look at all the factors and let's figure out what's best for you. And I think that the dealership that does it best is going to be the one that's going to have a reputation for it. And those are the people that are going to win in the long run.
100%. I mean, when you look at brands historically that have been big on the leasing side, and you look at brands historically that have avoided leasing, now they're all going to have some sort of conversation there, because you got to present a payment option. You got to present a payment that's more affordable, not because maybe that's the best way for the customer, but maybe that's what they can afford. at the end of the day, I mean, not everyone can afford a, $900 a month payment for a basic car. Like I don't see that happening. So, used cars, certified program, leasing. Do you think that leasing is going to be the future? I mean, what do you think? Let's start with Peter. Go ahead.
I definitely think leasing is going to play an important role, and I'm going to agree with everybody what you're talking about. And what Larry was talking about is right on point, because if you can build a relationship and if you can trust and build that relationship, it's all like we've done a couple shows in the last couple months about the customer experience and importance of getting reviews. But if that customer trusts you and you're able to build that relationship with them and there's that transparency, you hit them with a $800 a month payment after you peel them off the ceiling, you can explain to them, and you sell the value, and they got that trust there. But leasing is, I think, one of the things we're going to start seeing more people move to, because there are some tax benefits, and I think we need to start educating the sales force about how to present that properly. And when I was back with Ford, it was a purchase option. It wasn't a lease. You just phrase it differently. It's all about how you present it. But if you can build that relationship, I think leasing is going to have a great opportunity, because as people understand it better, it's really to their advantage. And we don't want to bury these people in a car for 96 months. I just think we're shooting ourselves right in the foot.
Well, when you look at cell phones, for example, I mean, I remember everyone being shocked when an iPhone was $500. Now it's what, $1,500? You got people like, they're never going to own the phone. Like, it's going to be 2 years and then they're going to trade it in, because like they literally can't afford the upfront money. So, I mean, you're going to get to that point, I think, with a lot of things. We were talking a little bit about Affirm and other companies, but you've got to look at what's the best option for the customer to get what they, need and fit their budget. And I think that's really a question of options. I think you might even see, decline in F&I if you don't do it right. I think that's where really, I think as a dealer, you got to look at it. Like, am I presenting not only the right options for a customer, am I presenting them in a way that it makes sense and it's affordable? Like, instead of presenting a package and going, oh, this is only this and this is only that, why don't you look at it as working with the front of the house a lot more closely? I think that's another area that needs to change. That sort of secret office in the back, I think they got to work in tandem today. I don't see how that, we've mentioned loaded payments, but I don't see how that can work any other way. Like, if that customer is already stretched on payment, the chance of them buying another $2,000-$3,000 is probably unlikely. But Troy, you guys study all the sides. What do you think on the leasing side? Have you guys seen an uptick on leasing penetration?
Unfortunately, the statistics, are going to say that story, but the underlying causality was COVID. Right? Like, during COVID, all the leasing stopped, and it stopped for almost 3 years.
Wow.
So, to see zero leasing for 36-month cycle, which was a full product, like a full vehicle buyer cycle on average, right? In the past. Yeah. To not have those vehicles coming in, obviously we're seeing a huge uptick in leases. The other thing that we're seeing is very interesting, and Ian, driving around Western Canada, is, Nissan Canada has 0% financing right now. Dodge is bringing back the $15,000 rebates on Rams. Now, I don't know what it's like in the US, but that's what we used to do back in 2020, 2018, 2016 was, remember GMC Truck Month? No one would buy a vehicle until August because they knew they were all going to get dumped, and then you could buy one before the new models came out. Well, it's almost like dealers have this weird, I bumped myself on the head, I don't want to come up with anything new, so let's go back to what worked 10 years ago. But 0% financing, that's not a dealer local game, that's an OEM game, right? And so the OEMs are recognizing part of the way we're going to mitigate this sticker shock, and to use Peter's term, having to peel people off the ceiling, let's throw 0% at them. That'll get them in the door. And you know what? That's not a bad move when you're 0% financing, and now you have to add on extended warranty and prepaid maintenance, which in our studies have shown those are the number 1 and 2 products that people are buying in F&I. And 41% of people are buying at least 1 or 2 products. So if you can get that little uplift and finance it at 0%,
okay, in touch soon. We can do
now
something.
you got to wait your shot at the box, right? And so it mitigates what Ian was talking about earlier, where you can still use F&I. It does dull some of the pain and the shock by having 0% interest, but you can't have two levers pulling in one direction and not have one pull down, and the one that pulls down is going to be that term's going to stretch. And then the only thing you got going for you is you have to buy something that's going to be really reliable, that will last for 8 or 10 years, because let's face it, there's a long time where vehicles after 5 years you didn't want to own them, or when it turned over 100,000, you're like, I got to get rid of this thing. But 10-year powertrain warranties on Stellantis vehicles, Mitsubishi vehicles, 10 years powertrain warranty. If you have a little peace of mind, that's what dealers can use to say 0% financing over 5 years. Long term, you're going to own this vehicle for 10 years because it's going to be super reliable. This is the best way to make it affordable. And I think we're going to start to see the wars come back with big rebates or 0% financing or 0.9% financing. I think that's right around the corner, especially with however long it takes for whatever the crisis in the Middle East takes. Here in Vancouver, diesel just hit $3 a liter, which is, I think, just short of $8 a gallon, right? So
that's $12 a gallon, buddy.
$12 a gallon. Sorry. So if you're driving a vehicle, it's $12 a gallon, and you have an option to get out of that thing, you're going to do that. So there's going to be a lot of really big incentives coming. I think this is going to be the year for that.
Well, I got a survey on LinkedIn running with when would you abandon the gas car? And I think the highest number was $8 a gallon. And I still have people who would never do it. I don't care. So I thought that was really interesting, just because obviously that's a hard cost. But when you look at the difference in cost between EVs and gas, it's still a massive cost. I mean, when you look at your average car being $50,000, what's the average EV today? I don't know.
But even just to that point, we were talking about used vehicles earlier. Automotive News Canada just put that bullet note this morning that on average, EVs are depreciating 50% faster than fuel cars in the same year. So there's going to be a giant bump of all these used EVs coming out of the market that I think are going to come in at a really good value.
Yep.
If someone buys them now. Yep. Because obviously gas prices are high. If you wait 6 months or they sit on your lot for 6 months and the situation in the Middle East resolves and gas prices normalize a little bit, you're going to have a ton of dead inventory that's going to be 10,000 or 10%, even less than that. So,
I mean, I think you're going to see a combination of factors. You've got import of EVs from new countries, at least in the Canadian market. Plus, you've got a glut of used EVs that were on lease that are going to get dumped. Plus, the depreciation can be as high as 70% on those. But when you combine that with gas prices in the short term, it may be an upside for the dealer to make a lot of money on those things. But in the medium to long term, who knows? But what do you think, Doug, on the leasing side? I mean, you guys see an uptick in leasing presenting?
Well, I don't know that I've noticed an uptick, but I think it's only logical that it should occur. I think that the smart operator is going to say, all right, based on what your intentions are, let's take a look at both leasing and financing, and let's see which one makes more sense to you. But again, there's going to be so much weight on the discovery portion of a sale and finding out what the customer's intentions truly are before you even go in either direction. I think that this industry has had a tendency to try to force a purchase experience or force a type of financing on people, as opposed to, let's not force it. Let's figure out what really makes sense for you. And if it doesn't make sense to lease, then don't lease,
Yep.
And if the payment's too high, then let's find a used vehicle that's priced right where we can still accomplish everything. Again, it's going to come down to really being a professional consultant with the customer.
Fair enough. What do you think, Erica? You're advising a lot of people on buying cars. Did they ask you about leasing and financing and all that stuff too, or?
Yeah, so the funny part is I literally was talking about this with my husband the other day, because he's like, I just don't get it. Like, I can't even get people into similar cars anymore. And I was like, I'm telling you, because I grew up in dealerships, for people that don't know, but I started my career on the OEM side. I worked for Toyota and Nissan and Volvo. And so for me, I'm like, the dealers and the OEMs are literally playing chicken right now. They want to see who's going to cave first, essentially. But it's really the OEMs who control the leasing, right? They figure out the residuals of the car. They put in the terms and the rates with the finance side of things. And the sheer fact of the matter is, we are now getting to this point. I'm sure it's probably getting very close in Canada. It's getting incredibly close in the US, where if OEMs do not start putting out more aggressive lease vehicles, not only are they going to lose market share, they're going to lose retention, both on the sales and service side of things. And that's the part that I joked with him. I was like, I'm literally waiting for Armageddon, right? At this point of like, who's going to be the first to put out this incredible lease deal on one of their cars, and then watch like hotcakes as they go flying off the lot, right? Which technically, with production and things of that nature, some of these brands don't have to, right? And that's why they're holding firm. They're holding so firm because they're like, that's my profit, right? As an ex-OEM person, that's my profit. I don't have to eat into my profit yet. And it's more of the dealer problem. But the beautiful thing I would say about a good franchise dealer partnership, right, is that a good franchise understands that in order to not only keep the integrity of my brand and keep the market share that I want to see within certain markets, et cetera, you have to give the dealers a little bit more to be able to sell those cars. And that's the part that I'm waiting on. And I have my OEMs that I think are going to do it and do it well. And so I'm really, really intrigued to watch the market over the next, I'd say 6 months, because I think that's where the boiling point's coming. We already saw in April, right, of like not the greatest of sales volumes. So yeah, I think good luck to whoever brings it first.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at a comparative product like an F-150 and a Dodge Ram, the pick two trucks, I mean, you could see a massive shift in purchases based on just a lease program. Like it ain't even about the truck anymore. It's like, okay, I'm a contractor. I need a new truck. What's the payment? Like they're comparable product, right? Or if you look at, say, a Honda CRV and a RAV4 to pick two other products, like that's a drag out fight. I mean, Nissan's coming back with more programs for the same reason. It's like, well, like how do you take that market away from the other person when the comparable product is very similar? Like there's not a lot of difference, right?
And again, having been at Nissan, I think that's where I see the most opportunity for them is to bring back those really aggressive, like Rogue. You know, they're one of the few that still have an Altima, a Sentra, right? Like these smaller compact cars. You start bringing out really aggressive lease deals, and you'll start seeing people flip from, again, older Toyotas or whatever that they can't get into anything similar for even a close of a price. So it's going to be really interesting.
But Erica, the good news here is, obviously with a lease, not only can you cap more of the inequity, but you have a shorter term cycle. You know, I explain to people all the time, OEMs don't really care about selling cars to consumers. They care to sell them to dealers, but dealers will only take them when they're selling. So a shorter buy cycle makes everybody happy. You know, it's one of those things that looks like it might cost them, but it won't cost them if people start buying cars every 39 months instead of every 84 months.
Yeah,
and I was saying about this the other day with my past favorite brand, Scion, right? It was a great point of entry for Toyota buyers, basically. So kids, you know, 16 and up, basically in college, et cetera, could buy into a Scion. And it was basically a Toyota vehicle with a Toyota warranty, et cetera, et cetera. But it allowed them to stair step into Toyota. And that's the part too that I think, you know, I am intrigued to find if any of the OEMs start to do this, where they can stair step people into their brand.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I literally had a conversation with my brother. He's a Ford F-150 driver, and he's like, "Well, what about a Ram?" I'm like, "Well, what's your motivation? Is it brand or is it payment?" For him, it's 100% payment. Like he doesn't like. I mean, there's certain vehicles he probably wouldn't buy because he doesn't like them, but if they're comparable, you know, like that's where I think that the OEMs and the dealers are missing the boat. But more importantly, if you don't know, present the lease option. Like there's no harm in presenting it, even if the customer doesn't ask for it. Again, selling with payments. Like to me, it's like, you know, you can buy it 6 different ways. Here's a cash deal, here's a finance deal, here's a lease deal. Like doesn't matter to me. I'm just selling cars. Like how you make that work for you doesn't matter to me. And to avoid presenting something that could be $150 or $200 less a month, I think is insane. Like you really need to present that option. Because I mean, I remember training for Nissan. We were training F&I menu selling, and what shocked me, but more importantly shocked the people in F&I, is they were so used to presenting products they liked versus presenting options, then customer would pick it. And what surprised them was that customers would pick options they didn't even anticipate they would pick. And they didn't have to do anything other than go, okay, here's a couple products that might interest you, right? You know, and I thought that was really interesting. But more importantly, why would you not provide an option when you have that? I always
Exactly. Actually,
yeah.
One of the first things I made for my parents' dealership back in the day, because I was the only one who knew how to, utilize Word really well, was a F&I menu of gold, silver, and bronze, where it had different packages. And they saw an increase in their F&I revenue because of it. And I'm like, because people are simple, right? Like, it doesn't matter how intelligent or not intelligent you are. At the end of the day, we want to just see very simplified options for ourselves to say, you know what, that one matches the best for me.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at SaaS products, you look at cell phones, you look at restaurant menus. I mean, Peter, I'm sure can speak to that. But at the end of the day, like if that restaurant waiter didn't present specials, would anyone buy those if they were just on the menu? If they didn't focus on it, probably not. Right. So again, it's make it easy. Go ahead, Peter.
But it also goes back to what Larry was talking about. I think this goes back to an overall change that we have to have at the dealership level. There has to be training. We have to focus on building that relationship. But also, if we're going to have this menu and these options in F&I think it should be incorporated into part of the sales process, where as you've got this relationship you built with the customer, you start telling them a little bit about, so when they walk into F&I, they're not shocked. They kind of know, hey, I'm going to hear a little bit about this. Here's a couple of different things, some of my other clients have done. Present it in a way, but you need to lay out a little bit of groundwork. And I think that goes back to something that dealers need to do, in my opinion. They need to invest in their salespeople. Larry, you run around doing all this training and, it's like a revolving door, but you know what? It is a lot more effective to keep a salesperson, invest in that salesperson, train him and help him be successful than constantly running ads, replacing people. I'm not trying to put you out of business, Larry, because I love you, okay? But I think the dealers need to do a better job of training their salespeople and presenting these options and leading people into F&I where they've got the relationship. And now when the F&I manager presents it to them, they remember, wait a second, well, the guy out there, my salesperson who I trust and feel a little bit comfortable with, he told me a little bit about this. It will make it a little bit of a softer process.
And Peter, don't worry about me going out of business. The transient nature of this business and the foolishness of these managers. Erica, I'm a musician, and none of these guys have ever heard the old blues song by Johnny Taylor. It's cheaper to keep her. It's so much less expensive to keep your salesmen, your techs, your people. But every dealer brags about their culture. It's because they're not looking at their culture. They're not having their friend call service to try to make an appointment. They're not having somebody walk on the lot. Erica, you'll laugh your butt off. Every training course I do for new recruits, I train them, I make them understand the psychology of the sale, and then I send them out to mystery shop. But not to say they want a car, to say they want a car for their sister who just had a baby, or if they're old enough, their daughter that just had a baby. Now, we all know every thug breathes brilliant. Everybody knows that everything you talk about that isn't about money makes you money. What a great conversation starter. Congratulations, boy or girl, is it her first? Congratulations on being an aunt, an uncle, a grandpa. Nope, all over the country. Why the hell isn't she here? What's her credit look like? So it always comes back to the same thing. We're not smart. Listen, in the 20s and the 30s, if you smoked, it was easy because every glamorous movie star and every ball player smoked. You wanted to be like them. Now you got a package that says if you smoke this, you'll die. All right, let me get more cigarettes. Peter, I'm going to shock you because you just think I'm a crazy man running around playing my guitar and training. I also enjoy Greek mythology, and the Greeks had it right. They would tell these people, if you do this, horrible things are going to happen. They couldn't wait to do it. We always have to remember the Einstein quote. They asked him, what's the difference between genius and stupidity? And he said, genius has its limits. There is no limit on stupidity. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to change. The only difference is 30, 40 years ago, if you had a dealership, by accident, you made money. They came in, you pointed at the sticker, next. It isn't that way anymore. If you're not smart, if you're not on top of your used car, if you're not on top of fixed operations, if you're not having every salesman walk back to service while you're showing a car and say, listen, if I'm lucky enough to earn your business, these are the nice folks coming in. They're going to earn your business, going to work on your car. And by the way, we're just as inexpensive as oil changes, that makes us comfortable, or tire rotations or tires, but you never void your warranty because we use factory authorized parts from an authorized dealer. I mean, how can this not be still being done? When you, what's, Doug, you got, and Troy definitely has the numbers, what's the penetration loss in service, particularly after warranty? 70%? Can you imagine having any other business where you knew you were going to lose 70% of your business and nothing mattered? Good to see you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
sir.
Fabiola.
Thanks, sir.
Hold on for everybody. Say hi to Fabiola. I'm about to get him hired.
Hello. Thanks, Larry.
No problem. I'm gonna tune out a little bit,
All right,
guys.
no worries.
Nice to see everybody.
Yep, same here. Troy, did you want to talk a little bit about options or a little bit about retention?
Well, 100%. I mean, you know, I think it all goes back down to the buying experience as well. And Larry made a good point, and he said it in his own way, but there's a real sincere piece under that, you know, most people don't buy what they came in to buy. And some people don't fully understand all the options that are available to them. And some people probably walk in saying, I absolutely need heated and cooled cup holders. It's my make or break option, until they realize that, you know, that's probably going to break. But also, have you considered cooled seats? What about, you know, this, you know, having better, you know, CarPlay and infotainment experience? You know, there's a lot to be said for what Doug said of, we're not supposed to be selling cars. We're supposed to be helping people buy cars. And I think if you help people buy what they want, the payment will sort itself out. However, all the headwinds that we talked about in the beginning of the call are very, very real. There's going to be some interesting competition. And, you know, I had a friend who used to own a car wash in Edmonton, and asked him, like, hey, what, you know, is rain, like when it rains, is it bad for business? He said, no, the worst time for rain to affect my business is 3 days before rain's supposed to come, because then no one wants to go and wash their car knowing it's going to rain in 3 days. Well, if I know there's a program coming at the end of the month, or if I know that Chinese EVs are going to come in and they're $30,000 less than the Tesla, why don't I wait? And I think we're going to be battling a little bit of status quo and a little bit of fear of jumping in at the wrong time, unless those incentives are really, really enticing to people. And I think if Nissan's 0% has some success, we're going to start seeing it around Mazda. We'll probably see it in Kia and Hyundai. Stellantis Dodge for sure. We'll see it on Rams almost assuredly, especially diesel trucks. Diesel trucks are going to plummet if the price of fuel still stays high. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity buyers. People who didn't think they wanted a used EV, they're going to have one. People that didn't think they needed a diesel vehicle, they're going to find themselves getting one because it was, you know, $300 a month cheaper. Unclear how things are going to go, but payments are always going to be a factor. I mean, that's the whole reason why I had to show it anyway. We know it's the first question. How much is this going to cost me a month, right?
Yeah. 80% of customers are still payment buyers. I mean, I think that's something that people forget. They focus on the price. The price is not relevant for most people. It's what's it going to cost me a month? And I think that's really why I was always very successful at selling with options. But more importantly, presenting options. It's not even selling with options. It's giving people the opportunity to make a different decision that maybe you even expected. You know, I mean, you'll get someone who comes in on a cash buyer and then end up with a lease. You get someone who's a finance buyer, ends up leasing. You get someone who's a lease buyer, ends up paying cash. I mean, you just don't know. And I think not presenting options is crazy. Like, why would you not do that?
And I think that the way that Doug's concept of like helping people buy cars, and all of us have talked about dealers with the best intentions of making sure people have the package they want and they're getting the right solution to fit their circumstances. But much like Larry said, when you're doing the test calls, let's face it, when you walk in there as a cash buyer, Erica, as a dealer principal, that's not your number one best option, because I don't get holdbacks. I don't get any incentive from the bank to not do a finance. So we have to make sure that the overwhelming incentive for the dealer and the salespeople doesn't supersede the incentive for the customer to buy. and pushing someone into something that's not the best value. Like you made a good comment about the specials. Well, the hidden secret about, I worked in hotels for 22 years. The specials are the crap the chef wants to get rid of. So, sometimes presenting all the options comes with a veil of, what is this guy's angle? Why does this guy keep pushing me into a lease? Is he going to get $500 cash if he puts me in a lease versus the cash payment I want to make? So if we're sincere, I think all this works. But when people let the economic headwinds and trade winds of incentives blow them in a certain direction and it's not aligned with the customer, it's going to show up. And it's going to show up in the way that we're dealing with now. Again, with 3.5, 4 years past COVID, we've got no good used lease vehicles. Everyone's upside down on their 96-month payment because they paid full MSRP during COVID. And now we're in a situation where we have to try to be sincere. I think if we can pull it off, it'll work. If we can't pull it off, they'll see through it.
Fantastic. Doug, what do you think about options? And we're almost out of time, so maybe you combine it with your final thoughts.
I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, obviously, you should be offering options. I think what an interesting byproduct of all this will be is this continued lack of loyalty to a brand. I mean, we saw it go away during COVID. Now it could again evaporate as brands that can, come in at a lower payment, come in at a lower price point, can now start, stealing a little bit of business. I really do think that now more than ever, it's going to be really important to have great salespeople that can look and say, listen, I know you want heated seats. You don't need this level of trim. Let's go down a couple of levels because you can still have those. You might lose whatever, your heated coffee cup, but would you rather have your butt warm or your coffee warm? And let's go from there. So, I was born in Boulder, Colorado. I still live in the county. It is it's the hotbed of utopia. I think that everything that comes along is an opportunity to thrive, and those that embrace it that way will do fine.
Fantastic point of view. Erica. Final thoughts.
Everybody loves options, right? And I think that's the part. I think what dealers need to do right now is really focusing on their branding, their ethos, their vision, whatever you want to call it, right? Of who they are, what they do, and why they do it. And make sure your people know that too, right? Invest back into your people, because right now, we are hearing about a ton of turnover, right? From COVID days to now and et cetera. And I literally have 3 or 4 friends who have been texting me nonstop of how do I make sure that I keep my people? How do I make sure, because their pay plans aren't being optimized the way that they used to. And it truly comes down to being able to say, hey, I know this is not what it was 5 years ago, right? So are the customers. They are not going to have what they had 5 years ago. We have to level set expectations for ourselves and for them. And we're still here to do our jobs, right? And again, I apologize, guys. I'm a Patriots fan from, Boston area, but kind of like Bill Belichick always said with Pats, do your job, right? And so that's the part that I think dealers really need to get really laser focused on and start understanding their market and how they're going to attack it in the way that they need to stay successful. I mean, that's really where it's at.
Fantastic. Peter, any final thoughts?
Hey, I want to thank everybody for being on the show today. It was great having you. We'll love having the conversation. Hopefully, dealers, you took something away from the show. We invite you every week to join us. And like I said earlier, I think we need to invest in our team, build them, and help them do a better job and improve the communication and the transparency. And they're going to win long term.
Fantastic. Have yourself a great week. And we'll see you next week on the AutoHub show. Bye for now.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Bye, everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you for helping the industry get better today live.